In today's episode of the Aspiring Psychologist podcast, I am joined by Mark Turnbull, and we are discussing so many things that it might well be easier to tell you the things we're not covering. We are covering diabetes, being a slightly older applicant, being married, being a parent. We're talking motivational interviewing. We are talking so many useful themes. Stay tuned right to the end to get Mark's top tips for how to reduce burnout and how to be your most authentic self. Hi, welcome along to the Aspiring Psychologist podcast. I am Dr. Marianne Trent and I'm a qualified clinical psychologist. I am told many times by people that they are worried they might be too old, or that they want to get qualified and then have children after training. And I often respond in the same way, that there is no race. It's okay. It's all right to have a different start point to somebody else, and that we all have different life experiences really which will affect our trajectory. But today we are talking with an incoming trainee clinical psychologist who has had quite a few adverse life experiences and who has so much useful stuff that we can learn from. And it was just such a pleasure speaking with him, and I hope you'll find it a really helpful listen. We would love to know what you think to this episode, so please do let me know of any feedback that you have got. I'd also love it if you came and let me know in the free Facebook group, which is the Aspiring Psychologist Community with Dr. Marianne Trent. I will look forward to catching up with you on the other side. Hope you find this useful. Hi, I just want to welcome along our guest for today, Mark Turnbull, who is an incoming trainee clinical psychologist. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for reaching out to me. You are another LinkedIn reacher outer. And we just chatting in the DMs, didn't we? So you'd contacted me to say how much you'd enjoyed the recent podcast episode with Nikita, she's also an incoming trainee, but also to just highlight that other perspectives are equally as valid, and that sometimes we just take our own sweet time to get to the same destination. And I really enjoyed our chats, which have been voice notes largely. And yeah, I said, how about coming on the podcast and talking to me? And thankfully you were game.
Yes, it's certainly a challenging experience applying for the DClin, and one thing I've taken from it is we can add to some of that extra pressure. And if you've got any questions, I'll be really honest about my experiences, and hopefully it can help lots of the other wonderful people thinking about applying next year with their journey.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. And I want to quickly highlight some of the reasons why I was so keen to talk to you, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We may not have a chance to cover them all because I've got to go and pick my kids up from school in a bit. But, just so that we can really think about some of the issues that you've been, that we've been discussing, is that you are age 40 currently. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't act it, but technically the birth certificate does say 40 now. Yes.
You are a parent as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've got a lovely 6.5-year-old, lovely daughter who's an absolute character. She's a really big driver for me. Yes.
Amazing. Best job ever. Things we worry about the most, but you get a lot back. You also have diabetes, type 1 diabetes.
Yes. So me and my wife got married 2015, looking forward to sort of a first year marriage. Felt really ill beginning of the year. I actually did an article for the London Economic about Blue Monday because I was feeling really down in January. I was thinking about different reasons that could be. The dip from the wedding, not really having anything, like that, to think about that. Yeah. It turns out a big reason for feeling quite down was I was becoming really ill with type 1 diabetes. Hadn't realised it yet. And it was only when I started to crave water and sugar like a vampire, and my pants were starting to sort of get really loose around the waist, I thought, I need to get to the doctors here, actually. So that was a big shock and a big fork in the road, so to speak. But one I think's been quite helpful, actually, in a way, for the declin process and, where I am today.
Absolutely. We can learn a lot along the way. And your alarm is going off. Are you going to be?
So that is
are you
my
be
diabetes.
Okay?
That is my diabetes alarm. But I've taken on some sugar. My sugars will be coming up, and sadly, treating the hypo is not like Popeye with the spinach. It does take a little bit of time for it to kick in, but I assure you, I'll be okay.
Okay. And this is perhaps an interesting dynamic that might crop up in therapy from time to time as well. How does that affect things?
Sometimes in a very helpful way. If you're thinking about engagement with a person, I used to work in diabetes prevention. Again, trying to learn from difficulties. In my current job, I work in bariatric psychology, so it's people living with obesity, and it happens more often than you'd maybe hope it happens. But my alarm will go off during the session, and I've got to treat a hypo, so I'm sort of stood doing the session about thinking about food, regular eating, and I'm eating sugary snacks, and this is medicinal, but I think it can help with engagement and that idea that the person you're talking to is a real person with a real range of experiences. I try to use it as helpfully as I can. And when I was diagnosed, I was lying in the hospital bed thinking, I applied some motivational interviewing sort of techniques, thinking I'm going to have to dance with this and not wrestle. And that was really helpful for coming to terms with accepting and understanding. So even when I got out of hospital the next day, luckily I had that psychology within me to utilize, but I was already on a path of trying to manage it and get along with it. Obviously you have up and downs with it, but it got to the point where when I was doing the DClin application, I didn't want to tick the box for disability confident, and my wife told us I was being stupid, and I took her to supervision, and without telling me I was being stupid, I think my supervisor was wondering similar, and I took it to Facebook, and you even might have commented on the Facebook page about it, but a lot of people did, and everybody unanimously said, tick that box, basically. So I listened to everybody and thought, what's going on there? Am I being too positive, and am I ignoring my own role in managing diabetes? It has helped my health, but I have to help it to help my health. So I've got a helpful relationship with it, I would say, on the whole.
The thing is it's a major life change. It's a major impact. And I've only really learned that from my hairdresser has diabetes and has it since she was a child. But I've only really learned it as I've watched her become pregnant and have babies. Yeah. And actually, it's a whole different, it's not a species, but a whole different way of trying to manage your own health, which is different than everybody else's health who isn't diabetic. And actually it's really empowered her to think about the benefit of really informed practitioners who are either themselves diabetic or have very, very relevant personal experience to carve out specialist roles, and it might well be that there's psychologists. I think there are psychologists working in diabetes services, but there's, that within healthcare, there is kind of diabetic informed practitioners to be able to work with that condition, because it changes everything. Before I got to know her well, I thought diabetes was about sugar. And it just isn't, is it? It's so complicated. It's about everything. Yeah. It's about everything. And it's about, I think the monitors have helped things a lot, but it still affects every area of somebody's life.
Yeah. And I think from a psychology point of view, and it's a core counselling skill, and it's a fundamental, but it's that ability for a health professional to really try to hear where somebody is and to be next to them, because it's very easy, and I know I've done it in the past and I'm really aware of that sort of roadblock within me, but to make assumptions, make conclusions. It seems logical that somebody would want to do something for health, but how often do people just listen to, you should do this, and go off and do it? People have different levels of activation, motivation, different priorities, different needs. And I think it's really important to just sort of recognize where people are. Diabetes is a tricky thing because you are managing it every minute of every day. It's one of those unique conditions where once that person leaves a room, they have a huge amount of responsibility potentially where the disease sort of goes. And I think people need to be respected with the challenge of that. And the more the psychologist or the nurse or whoever it is in the care team can meet the person where they are, the greater that person's got a chance of having a really helpful relationship with the health team, with managing a daily condition that's, for the rest of their life. I was lucky I had the psychology within me to call upon some of those skills. But some people don't have those skills, and the support around that, it's better than what it used to be, but it's tricky and it's challenging. But I think with that adversity of that condition, plus some of my daughter's adversity, I think it's trying to sort of reflect and notice how it impacts on you in a positive way, but also possibly, I'm a big fan of Leonard Cohen, and one of his lines is, "There's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in." And I really keep that in my mind, So even in those sort of dark moments, is there potentially, even if it's in the future or even small, some form of crack of hope, an opportunity where eventually, if you can just get through the day, eventually that might grow into something. Hence why I've worked in diabetes prevention and did really well delivering those sessions to patients. Hence why I think I've ended up at this time of my life being able to get on the DClin. I've probably answered a second question you've not even asked there, haven't I? Sorry.
It's all right. Like, honestly, there's so many areas of real, it's going to sound really morbid, but interest. Like you've alluded to another difficulty there, that your daughter has got health conditions as well.
Yeah. So my daughter was born with just through sheer bad luck. Everything about genetic conditions was a lot of luck and people being healthy, isn't it? As well as what people do when they're older. You need luck. A bit like running a car, things can happen. But yeah, she was born with a complex condition, a number of different issues, problems, dozens of operations. She had her last one 2 years today. I was telling you about it earlier, which was essentially a gastric bypass. So on a 4-year-old, in my interview for bariatric psychology, coming up to nearly 2 years ago, I said that my daughter had a gastric bypass, but I didn't tell them the context why. And it was only when I came off the phone, I went, how on earth did that land? How did his daughter have a gastric bypass? This is for people living with obesity. So I sent an email when I got off at the job going, can I just explain what I meant by that? What I was trying to say was I've got some experience from a personal point of view, but blah, 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 during the interview, I didn't actually give the context. But I think, I'm not going to lie, it was absolutely brutal, particularly the first year. And for me, again, using psychology at that point, there's no manual that says how to get through those times. And I sort of remember thinking, I'll get through each day. And if it works for one day, I'll try it the next day. And if it doesn't, I'll try something else. And I know people talk about being mindful, being in the moment. There's times where, you know what, you want to be away from that actually. And distraction could be the key thing you need to be a bit more present the next day. And I think it's one of those things where if you get through the day, that's a massive success. But people did say to us things would get better around 4 or 5 years. I mean, it took a gastric bypass for my daughter to start improving. But you know what? It sort of did around the age of 5. And through going to work in that adversity, I mean, there was times where I was like living in the hospital, like literally with my work stuff, clothes, leaving the ward. Bye, I'm off to work. Say bye to the nurses, coming back afterwards. And I look back now and I think, how and why did I do that? But in terms of training, in terms of being resilient, for me personally, it was really helpful, because it was always going to be a long haul. It wasn't going to be a quick fix or anything like that, but it gave me a platform to grow in my career. So from the diabetes prevention work I did, I ended up working in a role where I was a team leader. I was training social workers on MI and CBT. I was doing my casework with patients and had the biggest caseload and working with the most amount of GPs. So in a way, I sort of felt quite fit, at work. And I'd written myself off. I was telling you about, my sort of roadblock of ageism. And I was writing myself off in terms of DClin, and felt the ship had sailed, and I'd squandered my best chance of getting on in my 20s by just enjoying my 20s too much. And somebody said to me, like, Mark, look at what you're doing at work every single week. And I just stood back and I went, this is like working like a clinical psychologist. So I thought, I'm going to have another go. I'm going to apply. And, I'm really, really grateful I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of your future clients will be really grateful as well, and your cohort. They're going to be delighted to get to be part of your life and to benefit from your rich experience. And there's further adversity to come, in case everybody thinks, oh, that's surely enough. That's enough. I'm really sad to say that both of your parents died when you were a child.
Yeah. I hope people have tissues. I don't know, but no, I don't cry about it. And I've done my crying many years ago. It's something that has been so long ago now that it does have an impact, but not like an acute problem these days. And most of my life I've lived without my parents, so it is something that I've gradually adjusted to. I found it hard when I was a child, obviously, in different ways. Once my mum died, we moved school. I was very quiet all of a sudden, from being really chatty in this in a new school. I was very quiet, and I did my work, and I was doing my work within a few minutes. And I used work to distract myself from being in that environment after my mum had died. But I sort of realized I was fairly intelligent as well, so that became an unhelpful coping strategy in a way, because I was also competitive, so I wanted to be the quickest and the best at everything. And I still have that in me, but it's quieted down a little bit, that competitive streak. But I went to high school, a 2,000 pupil school, just after my dad died, and that was really challenging, because I'd moved back to Newcastle from the countryside in Northumberland where my nana lived, and all of a sudden I'm in the town again, and the people are slightly different compared to Northumberland. A lot more direct, a lot more sort of confident and brash, I guess, at least on the surface. And going to a 2,000 pupil school after your dad had died, it was really, really difficult, really tough. And I remember, as an unhelpful behavioural strategy, fighting a lot, because I was so frightened that I thought if I lash out, almost like it's going to keep me safe, but it didn't. It just got me more attention. So it was a really maladaptive thing with hindsight. But again, it was trying to find like an identity for me. And I think that's probably why, up until I became a 30-year-old person living with my now wife, I didn't have that identity. I didn't have that stability in my life. I probably didn't get it till me and my wife moved in when I was 30.
At which point your pancreas decided to pack
Yeah,
up.
exactly. Just to give us another curveball. But yeah, I could be a chava, I could be a SWAT, I could be a sporty person, I could be a class clown. I was just so dysregulated. And although I did well at A levels, well, sorry, I didn't do well at A levels. I actually failed my psychology A level because I had further adversity around that time. But the university took me on. I got a 2-1. I did a master's. I struggled with that. But I was so dysregulated through my 20s. And, if I did have a tip for people, based on my own experience, and I imagine this might be a minority thing, but it's just check in on where your head and emotion is at that point. Because although in some ways I felt I was ready for declin and good enough, with hindsight, my emotional intelligence, my stability, I just wasn't anywhere near it. Hence why I'm a little bit older getting onto declin, I think.
We get there when we're ready, absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
that.
I agree.
But with my psychology head on, I'm thinking, gosh, with the greatest deal of respect, you could be one of my clients, absolutely. There's enough experiences here that many other people.
I'm not paying you.
No, it's fine. Many people would have really struggled with this along the way and would have faltered, and it would be understandable given these nature of cumulative things that life have got tricky. But also with my psychologist head on, I think, gosh, you must have some really, you don't need to disclose them, but you must have some really strong protective factors. Obviously, your intelligence is one of them, but there's, we're always looking at, well, why isn't this a problem? Why isn't this? As well as why is this? Why now? But, protective factors can do a great deal.
Yeah, I guess I've got a competitive pride, like I mentioned earlier, and like a determination to, I guess when you've had quite a lot of adversity, one thing that may happen eventually is you become familiar with it and you become aware that some of that adversity might sort of gradually chip away to some degree through time, but also that there might be things that we can do to sort of heal from that adversity. So it might still be there and it might still be with you, but it could be further away. It might not come out as often potentially, or the trigger situations might be a bit more few and far between. But I mean, my protective factor now is obviously, my family. But one thing I didn't say about my dad was he was a competitive person, and he had the opportunity to go to university to be a doctor, like a medical doctor. He didn't want to leave Newcastle. And I mean, in my wedding speech, I did mention that, and I did say I hope to, follow in his footsteps. So even though he passed away coming up 30 years, it's still a driver in me. But it's not just to make him proud. I said this on Father's Day when I was at the crematorium, but it's also to like in a jokingly way, but get one up on him. So he was competitive, could have been a doctor, and I'd be lying if I said like, but deep down he's going to be proud. Deep down he will be proud that I've done it. But it is a little bit of competition and getting one up on him because he's such a talented man. He really was. But it has spurred me on, and I know we've all got different reasons for wanting to get on the declin. Most of mine are obviously about psychology and what I want to do to, assist people in difficulties and in distress. But I think being aware of your personal drivers is really important. As one of your books, reports, we've all got them. And again, Marianne, I know in your book you talk about being in a lecture theatre, hearing about clinical psychology, and somebody saying basically, "Oh, don't even bother." Essentially, yep, bingo. I remember the same conversation, same lecturer saying something very similar, and me going, "I'll show you." It's that competitiveness, I guess. Possibly tell me not to do something, I'll show you.
I'll get there, and then I'll tell everyone about how you told me not to do it.
Yeah.
But I think you also touch really nicely on on a grief issue there, which is how we can actually keep the presence of someone we loved with us in the present and have it be about continuing that relationship that never got a chance to reach its natural conclusion in longer life. And it's something I do with my dad as well. You know, I think about, oh, what would he say about that? What would he do about that? Or, you know, would I tease him about that? Yes, I would. And it's really nice that you can still have that playful element, even though your dad's not here.
Yeah. I agree. It's something nobody ever taught me to do. And if that's a helpful strategy that you share with some of your clients going through grief, that's something that when I was like 11 or 12, I just sort of did, and it helped me with sort of getting through different periods. I used to, if I was struggling with motivation or something, I used to sort of say, like, do it for me dad, you know, do it for dad. And that was something I would like sort of call upon to spur me on as a coping strategy. And yeah, it is something that's sort of still in me, but it doesn't come out of these days like I needed it to when I was a teenager. I think probably in my 20s, actually, I forgot about that and didn't maybe call upon it enough. Hence why I had such a good time at university and not enough studying and, you know, lack of emotional intelligence, let's say. But you're right. You get there when you're ready, don't you? And there's a lot of reasons behind readiness.
But we do all do slightly sillier things, you know, before we've got our full frontal lobes as well. So you might be being slightly harsh on yourself, you know. We're supposed to be like playful adolescent monkeys, you know, going off to go and wrestle and have fun with our colleagues and friends and, you know, coming into scrapes and then coming back into the fold in the evening. And it's maybe, you know, I hope that you had a fold that felt safe and loving, but your fold would have looked a little bit different than the average 2.4 family would have done.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I mean, I am aware, like, during those times, I still got a 2-1 and I still managed to do a master's. I used my dad's inheritance to self-fund a master's. I expected to do it within a year. I didn't want to go to work when I finished my degree. Just do a few essays, do an assignment, dead easy. First paper back. This is a poor piece of work, 35%, you know, big shock. This is going to be a lot bigger, a lot more challenging. But that just shows where my head was. I was either too high or too low. And that's what I mean about checking in with sort of headspace and readiness and just sort of making sure that, you know, the situation around you feels stable enough, you know, like we might do with patients on the bariatric pathway. Is this the right time? Is this going to help you more than it's potentially going to hinder? And just I guess know yourself as well as possible, because we've spent so much time thinking about the course, what the panel might be like, what to put on the form. But I know you talk about, you know, sort of self-compassion, you talk about, you know, kindness and patience quite often, but it's a neglected area potentially to somebody's preparation for this career.
But absolutely. You've mentioned motivational interviewing quite a few times, and I know that there might be some people listening to this who are thinking, oh, I should know what that is, or maybe even earlier in their career and think, I've not heard of that. Could you save people a Google and explain briefly what motivational interviewing is and why it's so good?
Yeah, so motivational interviewing is a style of having a conversation with a person, and it's not about, I think about it like this. So if you're trying to help your child into the water, I'm totally nicking off Steve Rolnick here, by the way, but, you know, instead of like trying to push them in or to pull them in to change, to doing something, you're next to the person and you're using some conversational skills that essentially are from sort of Rogers and a person-centered way of working with someone. to really try to ask open questions, find out what matters to them, what's really important to them. So if you're thinking about blood sugar, it might not be important for them at that moment to manage your blood sugar. It might be important to do something else. But if you can have a conversation about what something else looks like, you might be able to then trickle down, no pun intended, to something that could help them with thinking about their diabetes differently, seeing how those two things fit together. So it's really a style of conversation I alluded to earlier that looks more like a dance with the patient. So I know when I'm talking to people, if it feels like it's getting tense, if it feels like it's getting difficult, and the answers are becoming short, I'll just sort of check in on that and just sort of go back to how it's going. But it's something you could use with other approaches. So you can use it with like ACT, you can use it with CFT, you can use it with CBT. It's not something you do on its own, in my opinion. It complements some of the other work. But it's finding out what really matters to the person.
Yeah, and then you can use that to be the difference that makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of resources out there about motivational interviewing.
Lovely. Thank you for filling in that gap, because that's not something we've spoken about in the podcast so far. So what are you hoping to gain from training? At risk of making you answer your DClinPsy form all over again, what are you hoping to gain from training, or what are you looking forward to about these next 3 years?
So personally, it's felt like a recovery for me, given the potential I had and the decisions I might have made that took me away from that, and then some of the adversity that landed into our lives. So it feels like a symbol of recovery from that. And I couldn't have done that without psychology, because psychology over the last few years has helped me with that growth and that adversity and managing some of those difficulties. So for me, I'm looking forward to learning more about psychology, becoming a far, more helpful, well-rounded practitioner. And the university I'm going to really encourages you to become the practitioner you want to become, which is wonderful for me because I feel quite versatile and curious about different approaches. But I also hope that when it comes to retirement, how old will I be? 65, 70, who knows? I can look back on, the next 30 years and sort of feel like I've made a contribution to psychology. So I don't just mean with the services I work into and the patients I meet. I'm really passionate, and I know this could be a cliche, but the systems, so to use Dr. Kamara Jones's analogy of the dust factory, producing loads of dust, giving people masks to wear, treating them for the condition, the chest problems, but actually tackling the factory itself. That's sort of where I hope my work takes me. Done some work with people who are struggling with some of the difficulties, but doing something that really informs the societal, cultural, community change. And if I train other people along the way, or supervise people along the way, who look back and say Mark's been a helpful influence, I'll take that at 70. If I get there, I'll take that. I'll be quite happy with that. But I'm really excited because, 20 years ago, when me and you were in those lecture theatres hearing about clinical psychology, and that sort of spark happened 20 years later, 4 decades, 99, I started my A-levels. I'm just going to remember to be grounded, not too high or low, and to appreciate being on that course. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be bumps. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to put my hand up, and I'm going to do my best and really relish the opportunity. And I'm looking forward to the cohort itself. They seem really lovely from our social media conversations. I might be one of the older people, who knows, but I'm going to be enthusiastic and fun, and hopefully people will not realise I'm 40 when they start, unless we watch this, obviously, because this gives it away.
But I think there's so much, I don't know, I felt like 41 was a bit of a dodgy year for me for a variety of reasons, but 40, I was just loved life. Like, I felt really vibrant. My children were a little bit older. I felt like I'd come out of the kind of grief dip that I'd been in, and
Yeah.
I felt really good. I was the healthiest probably I've ever been. Like, I felt like 40. It felt like a big deal, but actually, when I got there, I was so proud to be 40 and
Yeah.
to be the product of my own experiences and all of the people that had shaped me along the way. And as I say that, I'm mindful of, sometimes people say, is there like a limit to the number of relevant experience roles you can put in on the DClinPsy form? Having read yours, I'm going to say no. Like,
Yeah.
yours went on for pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. But,
It-
all of those experiences we have with us, and we take with our client sessions and with our parenting, and I felt so proud to be 40, and I'm now 42, having recently turned 42, but to have all those experiences with me and to have that within the room with clients.
Yeah, it's trying to see it in a helpful way as a strength, and to have that sort of brush of compassion to paint it in a helpful way. But it's interesting you mentioned about experience, and I would always go back to, and I know it says this in the guidance, but the quality of experience. So one benefit of my career path is I've had a couple of jobs where I'm working with people every single day, Monday to Friday. And I was able to do that for a period of a couple of years in one job. And that for me was so helpful early on in my career. So I would be supportive of people thinking about working in supported housing for a reason, because just my experience, it was really helpful to see the wider determinants of health at play. You get to know people and you find out about their sort of life experience and adversities, and you're able to sort of start mapping it out. And I didn't know I was formulating at that point, but that's what I was doing, is I was taking in people's narratives and stories. But I think it gives you a really rich experience, and it's that lived experience that can really inform as much. I don't want to be too controversial and say more than a textbook or more than a lecture, but in terms of a colourful way of learning, watching somebody and getting to know somebody in front of your eyes and having that honour to be in their lives is just so powerful, and it really helped me become the person-centred person that I am, working next to the person as an equal. And I've loved the last few years seeing the NHS sort of catch up on that sort of spirit. It's a long time coming, but it's better late than never, I guess.
I would definitely echo that. I think I said in the ClinPsy book, I was a home carer for probably about a year or so. I learned so much about dignity and respect and compassion and just being a really good human first as an intervention. That I use every day. I use every day.
You don't have to do psychology necessarily. If you just meet them in a very equal way and you listen and you're just there, that can be powerful.
I think for me, it's the treating people as important. So at the time, I was working with colleagues who would be very much trying to rush the jobs to get them done as quick as they could so they could get out the door and still claim their full wage and get home. And sometimes I would turn up to what was supposed to be double-handed jobs, and the client was already in bed because they'd done it themselves. And that's like, I was to time, because if there was extra time, if it was just to go in and, make them a cup of tea and then check the doors locked call really for 15 minutes, I would sit and massage their legs with cream because they looked a bit dry. And they'd be like, "Oh, are you sure you don't need to dash off?" And I was like, "No, I've got another 7 minutes. We can do whatever." And sometimes they'd say, "Will you just watch Coronation Street with me?" And I was like, "Yes, of course I will." Because that's part of being human. And I could almost see them like really puzzled. Why are you wanting to do this? But it's because A, you matter to me, but B, I don't want to be in the nature of fraud. If I've said I'm going to be here for 15 minutes, I'm damn well going to be here, and I'm going to do your washing up, and I'm going to change your bed sheets, and I'm not just going to make you that cup of tea because you matter. And I think that's what we get from relevant experience roles.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you could have chose not to, but for you, your values, your character, you were very self-aware that how I would land, how I would feel. And yeah, you give a damn essentially. Yeah.
That said, I've never lost more sleep than when it was my job to lock people's doors. Then I'd be like, right, did I put the key back in the key safe? Did I? Like, it's a lot of responsibility, isn't it?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right, this has taken an unexpected turn, but it all feels so deep and so rich and so, I hope, what feels useful, inspiring and engaging for people.
Yeah.
You've given us lots and lots of really great take-home nuggets about reducing burnout on the way to, doctorate courses. Have you got any other kind of parting words of wisdom?
Yes, I think it's important, and I know you talk about patience and compassion, being authentic, being yourself on the form. We're not looking to catch you out. I couldn't say I do this and do that and do that when I've got a daughter with disabilities, where what I do is a lot of extra work and support around her. So I think be authentic, on that part of the form. I think regardless of the outcome, and I accept this is really, really challenging, but the fact that you're doing the application form, just take a bit of moment every now and again to recognize that, you're doing that form and what that says about you as a person, as a practitioner, and to really, just appreciate the enormity of it, I guess. And I think if you're feeling distress and difficulty while you're going through the form, my experience from talking to people is that the process doesn't half add to a lot of that. So it's nothing in you. If so many people are feeling that says something about the system, the process itself. So I think just, being really kind, take your time with it, take breaks, don't do too much work on it. Get 4 people, maybe maximum, to have a look at it. People that you trust, people that you know. Be aware of too much social media, but also too little. It can be useful, it can be helpful, but get the amount of it right. Pat yourself on the back and give you a cuddle. Like, before I applied, I would have loved to meet people who got on first time. And actually, I'd love to have conversations with people who got on 3 or 4 times. I'd love to hear about them as a personality. Yeah, just honestly, yeah.
Incredible. Just empower people to do what's authentic to them. I'm really sorry, but we are going to have to go because otherwise my kids are going to be put into wraparound childcare. But it's been the biggest privilege to speak to you, and I feel like I could invite you back on for many, many future episodes. But wishing you the loveliest time on training. There will be hard days. You may even fail another assignment, and that's okay. It's all part of the process, and many of us do. I definitely failed one. So just be kind to yourself, support yourself, look after yourself. Really enjoy this summer as well. I think it's a very special summer indeed, where you're about to start your training. Enjoy your family life. Enjoy not having any academic work to submit.
Definitely. I'm going to take a break, give your brain a bit of a rest before it all has to kick off again. But best wishes to everybody listening and thinking about applying for next year. Really, really good luck. Take care. And thanks, Marianne. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I am now back from the school run, and I've also been to the supermarket to get some mushrooms and some bread. But it is the same day that I spoke to Mark, and it was such a pleasure to speak to him. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to properly finish the episode as mindfully as I might have enjoyed, but I did send him some voice notes with quite profusive thank yous. So, yeah, I hope you found that really interesting. If you have your own unique stories to tell that you think people in this audience of aspiring psychologists might well gain or learn something from, then do please get in contact with me and let's see if we can sort out getting you on the podcast. If you would welcome some more guided help and support to support your career aspirations, then do check out the Aspiring Psychologist membership. There's more information about that in the show notes, or you can get it by clicking on any of the links in my social media bios. I'm Dr. Marianne Trent everywhere. Thank you so much for being part of my world. We will have some compassionate Q&As coming up to support the next application season. I will find some space in my diary and communicate those dates to you as soon as I can. Be kind to yourselves, and I'll look forward to catching up with you for the next episode, which is available for you from 6 a.m. on Monday. Take care.